Graziano, and Time to Talk.
A.M. on Monday, and that means it's time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral homes, Cox and Graziano of Bolton Marys in Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every Monday, I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point. And through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. So if you're joining us this morning on 1460 WVOX, good morning to Vinny and all others in the control room. We'll take your questions, comments, and calls that we encourage today to 914-636-0110. And good morning, Facebook Live viewers. Welcome. Glad to have you on. And we want you to join in the conversation too today, doing things a little differently. So my guest, I'm talking to myself today, which I've come to specialize in, as I've noticed. And my good friend Tim Judd, the man behind the camera, is in front of it as well today. We're talking about a variety of issues, but focused on aging and aging well. So once again, join in with your comments and questions. We'll take them, but any other topic that you feel is on your mind as well. Uh, Tim, lots to discuss, and a lot came up on the morning show today. It is a crazy world we live in, and all the tickers too are going up around here about the police debate nationally. And you know what? You almost feel like you want to use this platform for a few minutes to discuss. Yeah. You know, I'm such a backer of the blue, and you can't say enough about law enforcement. And there's so many different avenues that this conversation can go in right now. Monsignor Petrillo did a wonderful homily that really focused on this yesterday. And you don't, rather than casting a negative shadow and blanket over all law enforcement for the horrific actions of a few, um, I think we have to talk about this causes us to reflect on ourselves as a society. That for five people to act with such depravity, it kind of shows a bigger picture going on, that we've become a society so far removed from a moral compass, from God, from purpose, from social mores. Um, this was what happened in Memphis is a travesty, an absolute travesty. And again, not a blanket statement on law enforcement, because there are, I would the job of a police officer today. I don't know how they do it. Yeah, they receive so little support from the community. You have politicians talking about defunding them constantly. Their hands are tied behind their back. They have to be afraid to effectively carry out their duties. Oftentimes, it's easier to look the other way than deal with all that comes with making an arrest. And what they have now is they can't find qualified officers. You can't bring good men and women onto the job. And what you have here were ill-trained, horrific, you know, men with no soul, really.
Yeah, it's sad, and you can't say enough of how sad it is. Those acts that are caught on tape, and when those things come out, it's just um, it's tragic and disheartening for everyone involved and everyone that has to watch that and know that that goes on. Um, and I have several friends that are on the police force, and retired friends that are on the police force that are very upset when these things happen, and they don't know how to even support each other. It becomes difficult to support each other when these things go on, and everyone around them is talking about, do you know someone on your force that is like this, or do you know, uh, how could this happen? These are just all so impossible to answer for many of my friends. I mean, I've had little conversations with them about these things that go on. It's a very stressful job, and there's a lot that goes into it. And everyone wherever they work goes in and has stress in their job, but these are life-threatening situations that they get into, and these are situations that obviously these guys took actions beyond what was way beyond what was necessary, and really, really unfortunate.
And the problem now becomes what direction the debate's going to go. Yeah. I mean, you don't want it to go further down this road of defunding police or these blanket aspersions that get cast on law enforcement, because the truth is we have to remove the wrong people from the job, and we have to make sure proper training is given. But when you look at 5 men, that there wasn't one person who at one moment had this like moment to say, "Oh, wait a second, hold up, slow it down. What are we doing?" It's depravity. I mean, it's the worst of humankind. And I think identifying that and singling that out rather than turning this into a national issue of an anti-police movement. Because again, I think that's what brings us here. That's what brings us to the lack of qualified candidates for the job is this consistent lack of support towards law enforcement. You know, law enforcement put their lives on the line every day. They say goodbye to their spouses and children in the morning, and their heart is in their hands knowing if they'll come home later that day. So I don't think enough can be said to support, law enforcement at large. We're grateful. We thank you. I don't think this should be a blanket statement on law enforcement. However, I do think this begs certainly the removal of these 5 people and a discussion about properly supporting our police with training, boosting their morale. It's hard to do this job every day, but when you know it's a thankless job and your hands are tied behind your back and you're often the suspect yourself, I think this is how we get into situations like the ones we have. But my heart is with the victim's family, his mother, to have to see that. It's awful. Again, it speaks to the worst of humankind. And as my dear friend Monsignor Petrillo said in his homily as the pastor of OLPH yesterday, a society that's moved away from God. And certainly my opinion, but I think it's rooted in a lot of facts as witnessed here. But moving on to topics that we want to discuss today, I just think that certainly begs some attention. It is a scary world, and you often wonder, it's a hard world to even want to grow old in. It's a hard world to raise your kids in. It's a hard world to be any age in. Would you agree?
I would agree that, having 5 kids in different parts of the school system and very young adults, that they become very, it's petrifying watching them go out there and not knowing what situations they're going to get into, whether through no fault of their own or just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. As a parent, you just sit there and worry. I don't know how my mom did it with 11 kids. I just, it's mind-boggling. But you do hope and pray and keep them well. And we haven't discussed this latest round of stuff we're talking about, but we have on other occasions, and you just try and teach the lessons that need to be taught so they understand and are compassionate about what's going on, and always look at the other person's perspective and why they may be encouraging the situation that's going on.
Speaking of other perspectives, we have a caller on the line. Good morning, John Thomas. Welcome. John, are you on the line?
He's on and listening. Here.
Hello.
Yeah, good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, John Thomas. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind?
Yes, I am. John's on the line.
What's on your mind, John?
What's on my mind to add to what you said about training?
Yes.
Of the police department. I was a cop in Mount Vernon for 25 years.
Thank you for your service.
I got a lot of training, but my mind told me what to do. You can get all the training in the world.
That's correct.
But if you want to act like an animal, like those 5 cops did, that's on you.
Absolutely. There's no amount of training that could have, no amount of training would have ever, that's depravity. And
you have to go out there and treat people the way you want to be treated. That's how I did the job. And I got along very well in Mount Vernon.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did in years of good service. And again, it must be very frustrating for you from your perspective to watch what's unfolding.
Right. It was disgusting, and it breaks my heart. Right now, I only had training. I went on in 1963. I only had training for 1 month. 3 weeks at Iona College and 1 week up at Camp Smith with the FBI. Today, they get 6-7 months of training. How much training are you going to give these guys and women?
And again, to showing them how they acted. Training can't help that. You can go for all the training in the world, but if you're if your mind or
So
your
it's more in
animalistic
your
rage,
mind.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
more in your character.
Absolutely.
You have to have
You can't teach
character to do
character.
that job.
You can't
It's
teach
not-
morality.
Right.
No.
And even then, when the cops call the supervisor, people say, well, where was the supervisor? If they didn't call the supervisor, no one else is going. They don't know what's going out on the street.
Absolutely.
Unless they themselves. Why would they call the supervisor when they're beating this guy to death?
Absolutely.
They don't want to call the supervisor.
Right.
And their callousness in the aftermath, smoking cigarettes and laughing off to the side. I mean, everything about this, just should invoke anger in all of us. But again, we have to look at this picture for what it is. These are 5 bad men, and they are reflective of the society that has really moved away from having a moral compass. We don't grow our children up, respectfully anymore, collectively.
Right.
And again, not to say every parent, but like Tim is saying, it all starts in the home. It all starts growing up.
It all took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah,
it all starts in the home. I had 5 children. One passed away, but I didn't expect their teachers to teach them. I expected my wife and I to teach them.
Absolutely.
In the house what was right and what was wrong.
Absolutely.
They want to blame everybody else.
Well,
look
that's
in
just
the
it.
mirror.
There's no accountability.
Look in the mirror. I don't care what color you are. Just look in the mirror. Thank God it wasn't 5 white cops, though. I have to add this.
Well, I will say that the story would have been.
The cities would be burning right now.
You're correct.
Burning. You know what I'm saying? Burning.
I agree.
And looting.
Yes.
Let's call it like it is.
Well, John, I thank you for your service. I thank you for calling us and telling it like it is. I concur with everything you said.
I always say it like it is. I don't.
There's no other way to say it.
I have no other way to say it.
There's no other way to say it. I would be no other way. Thank you, John. You have a great day. Good morning, Marianne, joining us on Facebook. My good friend, Marianne Ybarra, who I've known my whole life. Thank you for tuning in. It's so true. It starts in the home. It starts growing up. I only have one child. She's 11, but I have to tell you everything from accountability. Don't blame your teachers, blame yourself. If you don't do as well as you wanted on a test, look at yourself, see where you fell short. Going to church on Sunday, realizing there's something bigger than just you in this world. And, there's no consequences to actions. And, it makes you feel older than what you are, as we do segue into aging, because the way I grew up, which was really not that long ago, is so different. And you have to fight to raise your children with those values, because the world is not giving it to them.
No, they're not watching it on TikTok, that's for sure. Or they're seeing the worst parts of these clips on there and all the other stuff on social media. That's the hardest part of managing my children now is watching what they're watching on social media and trying to share what they're interacting with, because everyone's on a personal device, which makes it their own choices of what they're doing. So really managing that, which is outside my view, is my wife trying to do our best to stay involved, get involved, and watch what they're being influenced by.
And also taking the devices away at some point.
It's just, I do that.
It's I don't have. She's not allowed to have TikTok. I think I would support any ban on that. I think if you want to, that's China's direct way of taking this over. Like, you don't have to be at war. This is a takeover.
We talk about that because they don't look at it from the deeper level at all. They're just like, it's just videos.
And it's a dumbing down of a generation. It's a complete mind-numbing activity and exercise.
Yeah.
It's the dumbing down of a generation.
Well, I know we were going to talk about other things, but I did recently read that the children who are affected by this and always watching videos and doing this, that they're not developing the cerebral cortex of their brain, and they're just not building their own intelligence.
Absolutely.
They're just being influenced.
There's so much scientific backed evidence. Years ago, the school that my daughter was in, we took part in this program called Screenagers, and it was a video, and then we had somebody come to the school. And there was scientific evidence of the mental effects, the scientific effects on cognitive ability and impairment. And it makes you wonder. We talk a lot about the onset of Alzheimer's and cognitive issues and cognitive impairment, and how, there's a correlation between that and mental stimulation. So you have to wonder about 30, 40 years from now, what the impact on this generation is going to be with cognitive decline as they come into later years. But with that, it's something very interesting that I read. And
it's scary to think about.
It is. It is. I don't know if we'll be around to do a show on that.
Maybe if we pay attention to what we're talking about today.
No, maybe if we get, well, you know what? It is possible, because 2 weeks ago, there was a study out that old mice can grow young again.
Yes.
So there's hope for all of us. In Boston labs, old blind mice have regained their eyesight, developed smarter and younger brains, and built healthier muscle and kidney tissue. How did they do this? I'm going to scroll down. But on the flip side, the young mice had prematurely aged. So the mice that they studied had prematurely aged. There was devastating effects to all the parts of their body, but there was hope for them. So how do they do that? The experiments show that aging is a reversible process capable of being driven forwards and backwards at will, said the anti-aging expert David Sinclair, a professor of genetics at the Blavatnik Institute of Harvard Medical School and the co-director of the Paul Glenn Center for Biology of Aging Research. So that's interesting. They say that we can affect our aging, and stress is by far a man-made, self-inflicted way that we prematurely age ourselves. So that statement is very powerful, that the aging process can be driven either forwards or backwards. Our bodies hold a backup copy of our youth that can be triggered to regenerate, said Sinclair, and he's the author of a new paper showcasing the work in his lab. The combined experiments published for the first time in the journal Cell, challenging the scientific belief that aging is the result of genetic mutations that undermine our DNA, creating a junkyard of damaged cellular tissue that can lead to deterioration, disease, and eventually death. But according to Sinclair, it's not junk and it's not damage that causes us to get old. He said he believes it's a loss of information, a loss in the cell's ability to read its original DNA, thus causing it to forget how to function. So in much the same way an old computer may develop corrupted software, it's the information theory of the aging, as Sinclair calls it. So another scientist who co-authored the paper said he expects the findings will transform the way we view the process of aging and the way we approach the treatment to diseases associated with aging. Very interesting.
Yeah.
There's
absolutely.
hope for us. I like that. I like that stuff. Oh, we have a caller on the line. Good morning, Vince.
Yes.
Good morning again. How are you, my friend?
I'm enjoying your show. And if I could make a comment about the thing in Memphis.
Yeah, sure, please.
You were talking about training and standards, and of course Mr. Thomas talking about that also. Interestingly, it turns out, I was reading a story yesterday that, like a lot of jurisdictions, unfortunately, in Memphis, they lowered the standards to be a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And at least 2 of the police officers involved in this insanity were hired under the lower standards. Now, I don't know if they were the main aggressors, but it used to be that you had to have an associate's degree.
Yes.
Or 54 credits.
Yes.
But they did away with that. You didn't. You apparently could just get by if you had 5 years of some kind of work experience.
Exactly. And why is that? They can't bring qualified candidates to the field, because why would you want to be in a profession that's continuously undermined by lawmakers, by the public?
There's another aspect to this that is a little bit more troubling, some might say. That in order to increase the pool of diverse candidates, minority candidates, a lot of people have been saying if they have convictions for low-level crimes or they don't have this. Now, look, I understand that we're trying to create a more diverse workforce, a more diverse college experience, a more diverse fire department, or, and all of this. There was even a story some years ago about trying to have lower the requirements to be an air traffic controller or even a pilot.
No,
in order to achieve.
I agree.
But I'm just suggesting that here in our own communities, I know in New Rochelle, we're having a mayoral election, and one of the candidates is very much interested in so-called, quote, police accountability, unquote. Now, I don't know exactly how that's going to play out, but my brother was a police officer, and as your last caller said, it's a very difficult position to be in, constantly coming up against trouble all the time, and your personality is on the line every time you walk out the door and deal with the public. So I'm just suggesting that we had best be very careful in the name of trying to create either a more diverse pool of applicants,
Yes.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Lower the standard.
Yeah, you can't create diversity by lowering the standards or settling for mediocrity. What you need to do is encourage the education and make it a ground-up approach. Diversity shouldn't come at the sacrifice of merit-based employment, qualified candidates.
This has always been the discussion of late. At what level do we change the requirements to have people admitted to various departments?
Well,
I was talking with somebody the other day. I know very little about the requirements to be a firefighter, but I had thought that firefighters needed to be trained or have the physical ability to maybe carry somebody out of a fire, or be able to carry a certain amount of dead weight, like a civilian who's passed out.
One would think. I would certainly, in the fire department in my neighborhood. No, Vince, I think you raised some great points. We have a few other callers on the line that I want to get to. But so if you want to. No, thank you. I appreciate the insight, and I agree with you. Thank you for listening and calling in. Good morning, Mondo.
No, Mondo, he dropped.
Oh, Mondo dropped. I'm sorry, Vince, but I was agreeing with what he's saying. And again, the goal and diversity in any workforce is a great thing, but ground up education, getting into the schools, letting students know the various career paths that they can take, but dropping the standards, dumbing down the standards. Again, it's a downward slope that we're collectively heading down as a society. If we've dropped the standards, if we value non-achievement, if we value mediocrity, where do we go from here? And again, that's as a parent of a young child, I worry about the world that my daughter lives in. I even thought about this recently. You can't even say go to the mall with your friends, things that I would have taken for granted years ago. And I wouldn't send my daughter with a group of friends to the mall. I would not, even in the beautiful Westchester, you don't have this safety and comfort. And I always say this, I don't know if you feel this way, the generation gap between you and your parents versus you and your kids.
Oh yeah,
it's far greater.
Well, I've listened to a video about someone saying that each child is raised by a different parent because my family, perfect example. My brother was 17 and leaving for school when my youngest brother was born. So, there's different generations, even in our own family.
Right.
But the experiences of the parent and their effects as becoming a parent, because everybody remembers, well, if you have the children, your first babyitis where everything has to be perfect and you can't do anything, that isn't perfect. And then you run into, another child or whatever, and you become more comfortable in that situation. But then, the life outside, which obviously is different from when I was growing up to now, and I'm thinking about different scenarios of what could possibly happen now.
Yeah, well, the problem is the what ifs aren't hypothetical anymore. We've seen them. Again, I go back to my good friend Monsignor Petrillo gave me a lot of food for the show today, but he said it's January 30th, and I think I can't think of the stat and the number of mass shootings that we've had this year.
It's a number you don't want to hold in your head.
We're moving in the wrong direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, the narrative of politicians that has contributed to this decline. Everything is okay. There's no accountability anymore.
Right.
This progressive narrative has taken over, and it just makes you wonder with the next generation as they rise the rank. If they're not bound by a moral compass, if they're not bound by accountability, if actions bear no consequence, what type of leaders will they be?
Right. and that they're our future, so they're watching what's happening now. So this becomes more commonplace to them, and that's the sad part, that they're being ingrained with this kind of thing where this needs to change now, so that they don't grow up thinking, oh, this happened.
Yeah,
You
no,
can't, you
absolutely.
can't have that.
You can't accept, you can't acquiesce. You always have to fight for what you believe
Right.
in and encourage your children to do the same. So it's so funny, you always, when you do a show like this, you don't know
Mhm.
which direction it could go in. So it went totally in the opposite direction, but I think it's good. I think it's good because, it is time to talk. That's the name of the show. And we had a lot to
Yeah.
talk about, but there was some positivity in all of this today, talking about the gruesome world we live in. You can reverse aging. I want to bring in actually experts more on that article that we read.
I want to mention that I think we can have Brian Mirabello back next week.
Oh, okay. Oh, I
And
would
he's a
love
breathing
that.
expert and has reversed aging in his own way.
Oh, bring them on. I need it. Amen.
Yeah. Next week.
Tim, thank you. This is really fun to do with you. We're going to
Yes.
do more of these. And thank you all for our wonderful, supportive listeners and viewers. I've gotten such wonderful feedback the past few months, and really, it's great to do the show for you and connect to the great community. So thank you. And this is Jen Graziano thanking you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Have a great day, Westchester. Bye-bye.